The city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
Nothing's changed and I'm still in the basement with no tattoos or mortgage payments. Well, I'm not so good with tenses. I'm tensing up thinking about what I'm supposed to call you now. Well, it takes a lot to shake me and my body breaks to figure out how to leave the past behind when it surrounds all of the time. And I don't know what I should call you now. I don't know what I should call you now. I don't believe that anyone runs from their past so easily unless they run towards someone else. And I've seen you lacing up for years. I guess your future looks great. Well, good for you. You're still my inspiration, with less in tune and more abrasive. And I'm not so good with tenses. I'm tensing up thinking about what I'm supposed to call you now. And it takes a lot to shake me. My body breaks to figure out how to leave the past behind when it surrounds all of the time. And I don't know what I should call you now. I don't know what I should call you now. X sounds dirty, I can't say it sounds so final. Now I'm still praying for the worst, for the better. We're nothing now, we're just two letters. Hope you understand. I'm not prepared to call you just a friend. I'm not so good with tenses. I'm tensing up thinking about what I'm supposed to call you now. I'm not so good with tenses. I'm tensing up thinking
We're discussing important health disparity for Hispanics, diabetes. Why are we more at risk? And what can we do to take preventive measures? It's all here on the next Latino Motion. Join us.
Choose to get lost in the woods to gain experience in forest management.
Choose to travel through time, to understand the past.
Choose to soar, to pursue a career in dance.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University. Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, a member of Geisinger, Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world, and South Jersey Gas.
Health disparities in the Hispanic community is a major concern for us here at Latino Motion and ALMA, an Atlanticare Employee Resource Group. That is why we are partnering to present this health segment. Tu salud es importante para nosotros.
Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. According to the CDC, 40% of U.S. adults are expected to develop type 2 diabetes over their lifetime. That number is even higher for Hispanic men and women at more than 50%. Joining me is Randy Almazar with the Atlanticare to discuss this important issue. Doctor, welcome to Latino Motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the show.
So how big is this problem? I mean, it's incredible that over 50% of Latinos will develop diabetes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what's important about those numbers is, yes, we know that diabetes has increased in prevalence over the last 20 years. Actually, it's tripled over the last 20 years. But for Hispanics in general, that number is increasing at higher rates. So about the prevalence for Latinos, roughly 12 to 13% of Latinos. And as you mentioned, about 50% over the lifetime for both men and women are at risk.
And are we finding that diabetes developing at a younger age?
Absolutely, yes. We're noticing that diabetes is developing at younger ages, and there's a variety of reasons for that. Some of it is genetic. We know that patients who have a parent who has type 2 diabetes are at higher risk of developing diabetes, but also environmental risk factors are very important. Obesity, there's a direct correlation between obesity and diabetes, specifically having a body mass index of above 25.
Just to discuss so you mentioned, kind of alluded to some of the risk factors, genetics, et cetera. What are some of the environmental risk factors, for example?
So, so gestational diabetes, for instance. So women who in pregnancy have diabetes are at 50% risk of developing diabetes subsequently, not only for the mother, but also for the child. Sedentary behavior, so lack of exercise, dietary indiscretion, so eating high carbohydrate diets, as well as
that diet is very important. In fact, we have a specialist who's going to just talk about the diet and why it's so critical. But why is it so prevalent in the Latino community? What's the factor?
Yeah, so there was an important study that came out, the Annals of Internal Medicine in 1996. This was an observational cohort study looking at these risk factors. And basically their conclusion was that Hispanics are 2 to 6 times more likely than non-Hispanic whites to have diabetes. Why? There's a number of reasons. Socioeconomic factors play a role. So patients who have lower educational values have higher risk of diabetes, as well as cultural norms. So we know that, as we alluded to, diet and certain other cultural norms, as well as access to medical care. We know that Hispanics are presenting later in stages of diabetes. So all these combined are factoring in.
You bring up an important point, but before we do, let's talk about what the potential complications are for not keeping diabetes in control, and obviously early detection and being able to go to the doctor is very key.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an important part of what I do is prevention, is trying to prevent patients who have uncontrolled diabetes of getting these secondary effects. Number one is cardiovascular disease. We know that compared to diabetics, compared to non-diabetics, are twice as likely to have a heart attack and stroke. It's also the number one cause, diabetes is also the number one cause of blindness, of end-stage renal disease, of amputation. So all of these are potential complications of uncontrolled diabetes.
So what do we tell the Latino community, Hispanics out there, in terms of what can they do to take preventive measures for diabetes?
Absolutely. Number one is make sure to get to the doctor, get screened. If you have a family history, is extremely important because oftentimes diabetes, when we talk about pre-diabetes, the symptoms are very subtle. But when we talk about prevention in general, it's making sure to watch what you're eating, exercise, avoiding cigarette smoking, making sure to make these lifestyle modifications in order to prevent these effects.
So the doctor could guide you as to exactly what you should be doing, right? How about you mentioned life changes, and that obviously socioeconomics sometimes prevents that. What kind of help is there for those type of individuals?
Yeah, so my philosophy and my practice is really a comprehensive care. Number one, it takes education. Educating patients on those things that they can modify. Well, for patients that do have diabetes, it's making sure that they have the resources that they need. So for instance, if they don't have insurance, we try to guide them on options and try to facilitate partnerships with social workers and care coordinators to bridge that gap so they have the medications that they need.
What are some of the signs that maybe you should go see the doctor? Maybe you're developing diabetes.
Yeah, so one of the cardinal signs of diabetes is hyperglycemia, so high blood sugars, and insulin resistance. So what that means in practicality is that you start trying to eliminate the sugar through the urine. So you'll see that you have increased thirst, increased frequency of urination. As that progresses, weight loss, blurry vision. So all these symptoms in combination are what we consider risk factors.
Some of the things that you may dismiss because of the aging process, but there could be serious health problems that you need to go to the physician for.
Absolutely. These are cardinal signs of diabetes, and you have to really take it seriously because oftentimes type 2 diabetes, it presents where it's been present for many years. So when we talk about risk factors, complications of kidney disease, and how it affects vision and retinopathy. These are things that have been going on for a long time.
It's so important that we take care of that and take preventive measures. I'm going to talk about diet coming up next. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. We discuss the importance of a healthy diet for diabetics and non-diabetics alike with Melissa Savre with Atlantic Care. And Melissa, it's great to have you on the show, and it's also great that you brought an audience with you, your husband and daughter, here to the studio. Let's talk about diet, particularly if you have diabetes. Why is this so critical?
Diet, out of all of the things that people die of, 7 out of 10 are related to food. And with diabetes, carbohydrates really influence the blood sugars. So having diabetes doesn't mean you can't have carbohydrates, but you need to know the portion size, and you need to know what foods are higher in carbohydrates and in combinations with proteins, fiber, and fat.
So let's talk about, for example, what some of the good foods, what's some of the bad food?
So the good foods are your grains, your whole grains, fruits and vegetables, milk and yogurt. Then there's dairy, and you can have a little bit of dessert, but it really depends on how much you're having. So you can splurge.
Obviously, there's a lot of differences within the Latino community because of the dietary, cultural heritage. What are some of the differences as far as those cultural foods? And do we know which ones is good, which is bad, or is it just a matter of portions?
Well, portions definitely do play a factor in it, but with each group, they have their favorites. For instance, rice is a big staple for many different cultures. And there's 7 to 9 different rices out there. Right. So if you follow the glycemic index, you would say, oh, well, this rice has more or raises your blood sugar higher than others, but really it's the amount in the serving size. So a 1/3 cup of rice, depending on, or it doesn't depend really on the brown rice or white rice, they all contain the same amount of carbohydrates.
So what's the important control as far as the food and diet? Do you follow a strict diet, or is it just a guideline, or does it depend on the type of diabetes you have?
It really does depend. So if you have diabetes from a child, say you're type 1, then it's critical because you're on insulin, and that insulin is going to reflect the amount of carbohydrates that you can have. If you have type 2 diabetes, you still make an insulin, so you probably can get away with a little bit more carbohydrates, but still it is about portion control and making sure that the blood sugars aren't as high throughout the day, because there are different blood sugar types when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed. So we need to know the difference between the two of them.
So how important is the family in terms of caring for someone that is diabetic? Obviously, family and friends sometimes tend to lead you astray, so to speak, as far as your diet. But how important is it to have their support?
It is really important, but it's also important that you take control as well. Many patients come in thinking that their mother or their wives are going to make the appointments, give the insulin, do the blood sugars, but really it's the more that you know, the less chances of complications.
Let's talk about the testing that you do, the finger stick and the AC1 and the importance of the medication.
Okay, so A1C is something that's done every 2 to 3 months. It's how much sugar-coated is on a red blood cell. So if you don't have diabetes, it's usually between 4 to 5%. If you have diabetes, 6.5 and higher is an indicator of that. Now, finger sticks is what's happening right then and there. It's a concentration of your blood. And it's funny because I've had people say, I test my blood, I'm at this number, and 2 seconds later it's higher. Well, our blood doesn't stay in one spot, so it is going to change constantly.
So let's talk about other help that you could get if you're diabetic. Obviously, going to the doctor, as we discussed with Dr. Amansar. It's very important that you visit your doctor regularly, but where else can you get help and information?
So Team Diabetes, we have dietitians and we have diabetes educators that are nurses. We have them in the hospital, but we also have them strategically placed where the highest number of diabetic population, we look at the A1C, and I've been in 11 different offices in 5.5 years, basically because I need to go where people need me. Some people can't travel 30 minutes, so I can. So with Team Diabetes, we can work with the patients. We have more time. We can spend a half an hour to an hour where a doctor may only have 10 or 15 minutes. And we're also available through contact, email, phone calls, and we have support groups.
Let's talk about support groups. I understand there's some support groups right here in the area.
Right. There's going to actually be one tonight or on Tuesday nights, which is run by our director, Megan Kim, and it's 7 to 8 o'clock on the second Tuesday, and it's at the Pomona Hospital. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is call the Access Center to tell them that you're coming.
There are other groups available, just that's the only one for now.
Well, that's a free group, so anyone can go there, but we do have classes like What Do I Eat, Carb Counting, Living with Diabetes. We also have Pre-Diabetes, which is a grant that we have the 4th Wednesday of every month. It's free, you don't need a doctor's permission, you just come and we can really teach people how to prevent diabetes.
So it'll be very helpful to have some sort of guide for a Latino community in terms their various foods. So if someone has a schedule of what they normally eat, could they bring that to you and you could advise them on what's the best foods for them?
Absolutely, because every culture does have their favorites.
Well, thank you so much. Important information. We're going to continue. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion. Welcome back to Latino Motion. We discussed diabetes as a serious health concern, but there are other health disparities in the Latino community, and we expand on this further with Dr. Randy Amezar with Atlantic Care. And doctor, obviously there are other disparities. Let's talk about those.
Sure, yeah. And part of my role is to talk about preventative care. And diabetes is just one of them. It also included hypertension, hyperlipidemia, COPD. These are chronic illnesses that we deal with on a daily basis that we see much more prevalent in the Latin community.
So yeah, you're Dominican, you have your own practice in Pleasantville. Yes. Talk about that practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So in August, it'll be 4 years. I'm very proud to be in the community that I'm in, and we've made a lot of great strides. Many people in the community still don't know that we exist, but we hope to educate them on what we do, and we have a Spanish-speaking staff.
And it's important because we don't have enough Hispanic physicians in the area, so certainly it's a pleasure to have you here in our community. Let's talk about preventative care and primary health care. Many in the Latino community do not seek their annual physical the way they should, seeing the doctor regularly, which leads to other problems and complications. What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so there's a different philosophy, I think, traditionally in the Latin community about you go to the doctor when you're ill versus to go and prevent something from happening. So it takes a substantial amount of education to really emphasize that, of trying to get your routine blood work, your cancer prevention screenings, your preventative vaccines. These are all important when we talk about preventing chronic illnesses. And when there is a problem, we deal with that as well.
How often should you go to get your regular physical?
At least once a year. It varies depending on the patient, depending on your health status, but at a minimum once a year.
If you're a diabetic, how often should you see the physician?
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months?
Every 3 months. We have our diabetics come in and we adjust medications, we check blood sugars. We do a number of diagnostics to make sure that they're controlled.
Now, I know we just heard from Melissa about the importance of eating healthy and staying away from fatty foods and eating the right portions, etc. How important is that for the Latino community?
It's extremely important, and I refer patients to Melissa all the time. She's part of our team. We rely on her and providing some of that educational material, but that's crucial. My job is to really to help educate patients to make sure that they are empowered and really to minimize the number of medications that they're on.
Of course, not everyone has the opportunity to go see a physician who happens to speak Spanish. What do you tell those patients out in the community that have family members with language barriers? What's the important thing to note when they visit their doctor?
Yeah, that there's opportunities there to bridge the communication gap. We have language lines. There are often staff members who speak Spanish who are able to interpret. So there are opportunities there to make sure that they're heard and heard in their language.
Earlier you mentioned the fact that even if you don't have insurance, there are opportunities to still be seen by the physician. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a sliding scale policy where sometimes it's even our regular patients who may lose their insurance temporarily, and so we don't disconnect that relationship. We have them continue to see us and encourage them to continue coming in. We help provide samples of medications. We really try to make sure that they have all the resources.
So we got 2 minutes. talk a little bit more about you in terms you were raised here in the U.S., your parents are Dominican, what route did you take to go to medical school, and why did you choose this profession?
Yeah, so my parents were born and raised in Dominican Republic. I was born in New York City and grew up in Florida and had a loving, supportive family. I was the first person in my family to go to college. And at a young age, my parents also, they stressed the importance of education and making sure that I could achieve my dreams. And I saw that there was a tremendous need, both from a personal and a community standpoint, to go into medicine. I found it very exciting and worthwhile. So this has been 4 years in Atlantic Care and 7 years since medical school, so it's been quite a journey.
So what advice do you give those youth that might be out there, maybe Hispanics, future doctors? What advice do you give them about pursuing this career?
We need you. We need you. We need Hispanic doctors who are able to speak their language, to impart that perspective, to really show that leadership. There's ample opportunities there to achieve your dreams and to make sure to get everything that you want out of your career.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to this community. It's been 4 years, but you've been here for 4 years, and I'm glad that you were able to make it here to the show. Hope to have you back soon, because we have a lot of topics that we could talk about going forward as well. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us at home once again here on Latino Motion.
Choose to get your feet wet, to learn more about protecting our environment.
Choose to read minds, to understand the human brain.
Choose to get your hands dirty, to create a masterpiece.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, a member of Geisinger; Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world; and South Jersey Gas. Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.